It's established that infrastructure funding is tricky. So let's talk about trying to make it untricky in the interest of the people, shall we? I want to bring in Bart Chilton now. He is former commissioner of the U.S. Commodity Futures Trading Commission. Thanks for joining us on this Friday. Look, let's talk about the funding. You've written in the past about perhaps Washington marrying transportation infrastructure improvement with tax reform. How could that work in your mind?
Well, you know, tax reform is such a tricky issue, Lindsay, and it really has detractors from both political parties. But Orrin Hatch, who's the chair of the Senate Finance Committee, is a really good guy. He's worked with Republicans and Democrats alike. And I think if he marries both tax reform, not just corporate reform, but individual reform, like he said he wanted to, along with infrastructure improvements, whether or not it's dams, like you were just speaking about, or roads, or bridges, or airports, or ports, or rail, that those two things could get bipartisan support if he marries them together. But it's been a long time. It's been since 1986 that there's a tax reform in this country. Lots of fits and starts. So it's an uphill road for sure.
Well, a component of tax reform could be something we heard House Speaker Paul Ryan talk about, border adjustment. I want to play what he spoke about to sort of help people kind of explain what this concept is. Let's take a listen to what he said.
We're in the company of companies like North Korea and Somalia, Afghanistan and Iran, or something like that. So almost all other countries border adjust their taxes. And what that means is you tax based on if it was consumed in your country, not if it's made in your country. What America does, we tax people based on whether it's produced in America. And so that means we do not tax our imports and we tax our exports. And we're putting American-made products at a huge disadvantage. There's a built-in bias in our tax code to outsource manufacturing and re-import into this country.
Do you think this is something that Republicans might put into the language of a tax reform package that might help infrastructure improvements?
Well, I mean, it's a little complicated, and that's exactly what President Trump said about it back in December. So the idea would be, say you have a car, say you're a Ford Motor Company, and you import parts for that car from, say, Japan or Mexico. When you bring those things in, there would be a tax on it. When you export the actual vehicle, you don't get taxed on the revenues. Now, that might be okay for a big exporter, maybe car companies, maybe a Boeing or a Lockheed Martin. But if you're a retailer, if you're like a Walmart or a Dollar General, and you're just taking imports, and there's a higher fee on that, that's really could kill you. And it's really going to kill lots of people, average folks, Walmart shoppers and others who will pay more. And the tax, by the way, they're talking about is 20%. So a $10 T-shirt is now, you know, $12. A $200 TV is $220 just because of that import tax. So I think that's going to be a tough row to hoe, but doesn't mean they're not going to continue to talk about it. All these things are really in flux now. People are trying to figure out which way they're going, and a lot of the members of Congress are going back to their home districts. They're having these town hall meetings, and they're getting an earful on a bunch of matters. But tax reform and infrastructure improvement are definitely one of them. They're on the front burner, Lindsay.
Well, one of the things that a lot of these, you know, lawmakers, when they go back to their hometown constituents, it doesn't seem to me those hometown people would be worried about Walmart's dividends. It seems that they would be more, and big retailers, it seems like they want the jobs here. So wouldn't it seem as if the Republicans would say, quit taxing what is made here, we don't care what Walmart has to say, and let's adjust taxes that way? I mean, does it seem that out of the realm of possibility they might put something like that forward? I'm just curious about this. I've got to ask.
I think they'll put it forward, and I think it will pass the House. I think it will be DOA, dead on arrival, in the Senate. I just think there's no way that it'll get 51. I worked in the Senate for a number of years. I worked in the House for a decade. Just see no way that the Senate will pass it, but it may get through in the House. The bottom line is, really, to get the economy moving, you need to look at what we talked about initially, Lindsay, and that's the infrastructure improvement. I mean, you're talking about dams. The American Association of Civil Engineers gives us a D rating, a report card on dams. And on all our infrastructure, roads, bridges, etc., a D+. things are crumbling. We're one nation of a big pothole. And unless we put the infrastructure improvements there, we're not going to boost the economy. Every dollar you put into infrastructure creates $3 in the economy. So there's lots that can be done if you marry tax reform for individuals, not just corporate.
Yeah,
I mean,
right,
what they're talking about doing with the tax that Speaker Ryan was talking about is taking that money, the import tax, and then offsetting that money through a reduced corporate tax. So the corporations are going to do better, but individuals are going to pay a higher amount because there's taxes on their T-shirts and their clothing and their televisions.
Right,
so
the retailers.
It's a big hurdle.
Right, the retailers, of course, want to make America affordable again, which you and I have talked to. But I do want to stick to this point that you're talking about the infrastructure improvements, $1 coming out to $3 in the end. Democrats have put forward their package. Republicans haven't. We heard from Donald Trump. He said, first 100 days, I'm going to try to tackle this, or at least something to that extent. We're not seeing it. They said they're going to try to come out with it in the second 100 days in time for spring budget. People really want to hear about this stuff, maybe more than a Trump Muslim ban, as they're calling it. Why hasn't he tackled this yet? These are jobs.
Well, it's just a tough one, Lindsay, and it's not just people, it's markets and market participants. And as you report, all the time, I mean, markets are skyrocketing. They're going through the roof. But people are a little bit uneasy. It's like that old Tom Petty song. You take it on faith, you take it from the heart. But the waiting is the hardest part. And people are waiting to see this thing. Hopefully it'll come out soon.
Well, do you actually think that this dam crisis at Oroville is actually going to spur anything, or do you think this is they're going to keep the same pace?
I think they're probably going to keep at the same pace. My prayers are with everybody to make sure nothing happens at the dam out there. I think a lot of Californians are wondering whether or not they're going to get stuck with the entire bill for dam and repairs out there, dam and reservoir and levee repairs out there, because the president said he's not sure that he wants to fund everything in states that he lost, which was just a poor policy. But we'll pray for everybody there and hope it all works out with the rains they're getting in the next couple of days.
That's right. We'll see what it takes to spur Congress on to pass some of this infrastructure, some of these infrastructure packages. Thanks so much for your input, Bart Chilton, former commissioner of the U.S. Commodity Futures Trading Commission. Thanks so much.